Hey guys, I just got this Trickster up to level 75. I'm still not exactly sure what the build's gonna end up being, but I just wanted to show where it's at right now because I was leveling with Hollow Palm. And for anyone that doesn't know, Hollow Palm is one of the new cluster jewels. I guess the jewel is one with nothing, but Hollow Palm technique is the ability. So it's deck stacking. You don't use weapons or gloves, and you get a lot of attack speed and added fizz damage. So the idea of the build was just quickly path down here, picking up the dex nodes, hit these, they're the closest to your starting area. You could do the same thing with Ranger and path down here along these dex nodes and hit this one instead, because the proj damage doesn't do anything. But so I went for these while leveling, got one with nothing, and then just went for dex and life for the most part. I had started with smite, but now I've transitioned into ice crash. So ice crash, if you haven't seen it, it's this big explosion with two secondary small ones, almost like an earthquake. But so the idea being that I was just going to level with it and then respec to whatever I wanted. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do Arc with Archmage. I was also looking at a Arc Ignite setup using the Stormfire Ring. There were a couple other builds that I was potentially looking at, but I ended up just kind of making it more of an Ice Crash build right now. We'll probably switch the armor and helm, but it's been good so far, and I'm tempted just to keep it. The only downside that I'm running into is I don't know how I'm supposed to get much more life. And then likewise, getting more resist seems very hard because you just don't have a weapon, a shield, and gloves. So I've put a few points into resist on my tree, these guys and these guys. There's potential to pick up like something like this if I get more energy shield, but for now, like the only defensive layer I have is acrobatics and then 4,000 life, which feels pretty loose, and I'm not sure how I would get much more. Looking at other builds that have done this, like Raiders or Berserkers, a lot of them end up with pretty similar amounts of life. Berserkers a little more since they have more life near their starting area, but after Garokons, which gives like 200 something flat life, there's not a whole lot else. The big one would be getting a chest with more life. One potential option, I think I have it for sale just in case it sells, is one of these temple modded hybrid chests. So it gives a lot of life, but it gives much less dexterity. This thing is 15% increased dex, whereas this would just be a flat 33. And you can't really get a temple mod one with like percent dex or anything. So there's all some options, like maybe I could get the life a little higher, but for now it's just feeling a little squishy, and that could just be the resist problem, but that's where it's at right now. And I'm going to show a tier 5 map real quick. Let's do a tier 6 map just to say it's a yellow map. So fizzes extra lightning when my lightning is slow is probably a bad idea. I want to do cannot regenerate. It's doable with this one, just probably not ideal. Not quality yet. You know, it doesn't matter. So you guys will probably see what I mean if you watch my life bar as I run through this. One of the big things too with this, you can hold shift and use your ability to target the ground. Otherwise, depending on where you click, you might step forward. So if you're not super accurate, sometimes you can end up like just running into a monster that's like blocking your path if you're clicking too far ahead. Whereas if you hold shift, it doesn't matter where you click, you just attack towards your cursor. So for a lot of melee skills, that's kind of a thing, but in case you didn't know. So the clear's nice. Against these small things, it's easy. It's not excellent on Legion just because having to jump around everywhere. But the AoE is pretty nice still for being a melee skill, so it doesn't exactly feel melee. And then because you have the secondary explosions going on, a lot of times for the smaller stuff you can kind of hit and jump forward and not have to stand quite as long attacking. So the damage is pretty good for the amount of investment I have. I'll go through the gear in a little bit, but like I said, I've just been leveling it, so I haven't really spent much on the gear. And maybe because it's end of league, Astromantis is quite cheap. I think I bought mine for less than 20 chaos. Start of league, and depending on the league, sometimes they're more. But usually you can still find one like relatively cheap. One with nothing was the same way though. Like I got it for 10 chaos. But I know when Mathwell was running his build, and around that time they were going for 1 exalt. But it was new and everyone wanted to try the deck stacking thing, I think. But that'll be the make it or break it if this build ends up expensive or not, is if that jewel is rare after Delirium League, or if people find like a good deck stacking build that works. So like I say in most of my videos, I'm like relatively slow compared to what some people might be doing, but with this skill it feels pretty good. Like the clear speed's relatively quick. When I showed the last build that I was leveling around level 70 for the charge dash build, it was also struggling with survivability, but the upgrade paths were a little more clear. So this one, it's just if you can figure out a way to get more life, or maybe there's a way to get Mind Over Matter working, or like if you used Cloak of Defiance, even though it doesn't give dex, maybe that gives enough survivability to feel good. Then I can see this being like better to do as a Trickster. But most of the other deck stacking builds are obviously Ranger, since that starts in the middle of the decks, or Berserker because they get a lot of just straight damage. So both of those choices so far seem at least a little bit better. You just get better offensive options. Whereas Trickster, the Ghost Shroud defensive stuff, and the Energy Shield, so far I haven't really been taken advantage of too much. We'll see if I get an Energy Shield helm and a better chest. Maybe I get enough Energy Shield to switch off Acrobatics and then have a good feeling setup. But just a little more about the leveling process. It was easily the smoothest leveling that I've ever done, because you don't have to worry about upgrading your weapon constantly. Ice Crash is nice AoE. You get a whole bunch of attack speed and just easy damage from stacking your decks. leveling, like if I leveled another character this league, I would do the same thing and then just respec it to whatever build I was doing. Other people have said it, but I think if they don't like nerf or put some level requirement on the one with nothing jewel, then this might be the go-to leveling setup for many builds. At least like Duelist, Ranger, Trickster that start in a lot of the dex areas. So I'll wait on selling stuff. So brief touch on the gear, like I mentioned. Since the Trickster has the Escape Artist Ascendancy, you really benefit from having Energy Shield on your helmet. So if you have a 150 Energy Shield helmet, you end up with 750 evasion off of it. So if we look at Starkonja's, if I were to just have an Energy Shield helmet that gave 150 Energy Shield, I'd get about the same amount of evasion. So really all this is doing for me is life and dex and a little bit of attack speed. It's hard to get a high Energy Shield helmet with dex on it, but you can use the Deafening Essence of Sorrows to try to hit something good on like a Hubris Circuit, or you could just take a hybrid evasion in helm and try to craft life onto it. Ideally life and resist, since resist are lacking, and that'll probably be what ends up happening here, is try to fill out the rest of this lightning resist and a bit of fire resist by picking an Energy Shield helm, using Essence of Sorrows on it to try to hit life and resist, and then effectively it ends up about as good as this one. There's some better options for amulets potentially, since we don't really care about strength or int at all. Because we don't have Shaper's Gloves, the other stats don't matter for us. So there's some amulets that could give you like 20 more dex than Astromantis does, and then some like additional life or other defenses, but this is just an easy cheap option. If you're looking at spending exalts on this, then this is upgradable. I think Garokon's is almost required, just because the amount of life, like with the 1000 life that we have, this is giving us 200 flat life, or sorry, 1000 dex that we have, this gives us 200 flat life. The coil is good. There might be some comparable high-end options, but since we care about life on this one and attributes, and it gives us cannot be frozen because dex is higher than int, then it ends up just really nice. It also gives us some increased damage with 180 strength being our lowest. So that's mostly it. Rings are just going to fill out resist. Ideally they have dex on them as well, but dex is a suffix, so it's kind of cutting into the amount of resist they can provide. But yeah, just wanted to show the basic idea, show it run a map. Again, I'm probably going to respec this into something else, but as far as leveling went and just getting to level 75 very quickly, it felt like, and getting through the axe, doing stuff like four-shotting Piety and stuff, just made the leveling process super smooth. Yeah, and I want to say that's it. I guess I could mention this cluster jewel, since I've talked about cluster jewels every time. Similar to the charge dash build, I did the same thing here and just grabbed a large one with dex and increased effect. So each of these points is giving me 15% cold damage and 8 dex. So these felt pretty efficient compared to, I don't know, a lot of the other like traveling and hitting dex stuff, like picking up Ballistic Mastery. It ends up just 10 dex per point with some minor movement speed chance to stun upside, like if you look at both of these as a whole. Whereas now, like our 2 points here are worth 16 dex and 30% increased damage. These are pretty important for Ice Crash because it only converts 50% of your phys damage to cold. I thought it did. I could even be wrong about that. Anyways, I'm converting 40% here. I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, picked up some resist, but really you're just picking up life dex, and this guy converts strength to dex. I have acrobatics for now, but that'll probably change if I can get more life energy shield. And yeah. If you have any questions, let me know. Again, there's other videos about this too. People have used Frenzy, people use Smite. I like the idea of Ice Crash because of the AoE. And yeah, thank you guys, and see you later.